Our speaker today is Reverend Dr. Alexander G., and he's a lifelong Madison resident, founder and CEO of the Nehemiah Center of Urban Leadership Development, pastor of the Fountain of Life Church, and host of the award-winning podcast, Black Like Me. Dr. G will tell us about the Center for Black Excellence in Culture that will be going up just across the street on Park Street here. So I'll invite you up, Dr. G.
Sorry, I didn't mean to ring the bell.
Meeting's not over yet.
Now, we're all, the offering is the last thing you do, so if you raise the $5, that's really hit the bell so we can go home. It's really wonderful to be here. It's been years since I've been to Rotary South. So thank you so much for your invitation. You know, I was chuckling a bit when it was announced that Bob and Carol Gorsuch was celebrating their 61st anniversary. I worked for Bob 40 years ago when I was an econ major at UW-Madison. And I was doing the math and I was thinking, oh, well, I almost had to put $5 in a chart. I said, wait, I'm older than Bob Gorsuch was when I worked for him? God, that's kind of scary because I was really old. I love Bob. I love Bob. So tell Bob I said that. It's really wonderful to be here. Not only am I a lifelong Madisonian, but I've either lived, worked, or owned property in South Madison for the past 50 years. So you can see my office. I'm the church right up the hill from Burger King. But I grew up in this side of town, delivering newspapers on, up and down Park Street, Park Village. Are there other long-term Madisonians? Do you remember when when Famous Days used to be Andy's A&W? Oh, yeah. That was my first job. And so I appreciate this community. Remember when Eagles Foods was right behind us where the transfer point is. So as I drive through this area, Village or Mall, I have so many pleasant memories. This community gave so much back to my mother and to my family. When we moved here from Chicago, many of you heard part of my story, but my mother was going through a divorce. My father was physically abusive and alcoholic. And my mom just needed a new lease on life. And she came to Madison to visit friends and saw the campus and the lakes and fell in love with Madison. And although she had dropped out of high school her freshman year, she took the entrance exam and crushed it and got 2 degrees from Wisconsin, graduated with her master's in social work and graduated with honors and paid cash for me to go to college and for my sister where we met our spouses. And so it's just so interesting how tremendous moves and acts of faith and perseverance can just cause such a powerful circle effect. But the reason why I talk about my program and being in South Madison is that my mother encouraged us to give back to the community. And so that's actually, I'm just going back to the beginning slide, to give back to the community. Madison is experiencing a brain drain, a Black brain drain in particular. For the state of Wisconsin and even for the northern US, we are experiencing the greatest reverse migration, that is of Black people to the south from the north than at any time in US history. And I know when I say that to Madisonians, they think, well, how, why? That's a whole nother Rotary visit. But part of it is the subtleties of disparities, the subtle exclusionary kinds of things that take place, the lack of role modeling, the lack of access, the lack of cultural reinforcement and celebration, the lack of folks in social services and in classrooms and administration and classrooms on campus and physicians. It takes its toll. And we now know that racism and microaggressions have been deemed by the mayor and the city of and the county council of Madison as a social determinant of health, which is just a fancy way of saying that Black people also have a shorter life expectancy in places like Madison than our Black counterparts in the South or our white counterparts here. So for us, we're just trying to figure out what's going on. And I'll just say this isn't the part of my talk, but I'll just give it to you for free. So many of the people that are struggling with health issues have degrees from Wisconsin. 2 adults working in the household, Cadillac insurance, but they are contributing to the infant mortality rate, stillbirth. My wife and I lost 2 babies to premature birth who lived just an hour after birth, and both of those daughters in 92 and 93 died about an hour later. And so I just said it to dispel the fact that when we talk about health disparities, we are not talking about single moms living in poverty who don't have insurance. Let's just squash that. It's really across the board, because once you say that, you have to then begin to ask, well, why? What's the common factor? You look at part of the common factor. And so part of what I want to do is help Madison become a place that's worthy of its recognition as one of the best places to live. And I want to contribute. So I just opened this up just so that we understand why we're building the center. I certainly invite you, we can have conversations afterwards or point you to other places to learn more about these realities. But one of the things that makes it more difficult to live in Madison is that even after the Race to Equity report, which came out 10 years ago, Justified Anger, which came out 10 years ago, the fact that these disparities exist is still shocking and surprising to me. People are still saying, well, why didn't I know that? How could this be the case? And so I'm building the center in order to help people to really want to stay in Madison and to see themselves culturally. I use this example that if I went to my grandmother's house and I saw everyone, all the other grandchildren, artwork, medals, awards, drawings, except for mine. After about the third time, I'd say, hey, grandma, we need to have a conversation. There's something you need to tell me. We begin to wonder, am I really part of this family? What haven't we talked about? That's really the case. That's the case when we talk about the culture of Black people in Madison. It used to exist. In the 50s, there were Black-owned auto dealers and dry cleaners and restaurants, even in South Madison. Things have changed. And so kids are growing up thinking we never had that. We never controlled culture. So part of this is that we want to be able to have a place that reflects our transcendence and our contributions to the state of Wisconsin. So as I interviewed and listened to over 700 Black influencers in this community, doctors, folks who were formerly incarcerated, nurses, single moms, Madison-born African-Americans in their 20s, administrators, physicians, I think I said that were professors, state workers. What would it take to make your children want to live here and want to stay here? Surprisingly, these are important things. I just thought I'd just come and just kind of stir up a little things that really out. None of them had to do with extra bus routes. None of them had to do with more free lunches. None of the responses had to do with more backpacks for school supply. It was a place so that my children can understand their excellence. My mom is 83 years old and has dementia, and she just got her first Black physician in her life. She has never, ever had someone on the other end of the stethoscope who looked like her in her entire life. I've never had a doctor who looks like me in my entire life. And when I studied economics and African American history at UW-Madison, the chair of the Afro-Am department was Bill Vanderburg. Doesn't sound very Black, does it? He wasn't. And so even the education that I received was still sifted through the experience of someone who didn't fully understand that experience. Those things don't seem to add up, but if you've never lived in a place or space that was void of that interaction, it causes a level of internal questioning. And we want to turn that around. We want folks to understand that Black people have been in this state for a century and have contributed. And so this will be a place where that story will be told all around, of the story of Black contributions all around the state of Wisconsin. So let me just jump through here. What time do I need to be finished? Because I'd like to leave a few minutes. 1:15?
Yeah.
Oh, I got a lot of time. Okay. And so, but the beauty of this is because I love this community. I remember the transformation in my mother. She came alive here and found out that she was an intellectual and she met other thinkers, although they were younger than her. It was a community that just offered all kinds of things. My mom dropped out of college, undergrad. And when I was a junior at West High School, I graduated from West. I was a junior at UW. I dared my mother to come back to school with me. So my mom and I had 3 classes. Yeah. Try to pick up people. Try to get a date in class. Young man, you get a boy sit next to your mom in college. And so I thought, okay, this is my chance. I can talk to folks. I'm sitting next to my mom because you can't come into class. I was like this side. You can't have your mom sitting here and you sit way back in the corner. Because it's like you're trying to dish your own mother. But then if you sit right next to your mother, you look like a little mama's boy. And so, which I was and I still am. And so I remember once in the Abraham department, professor asked the question, mom answered, she's very outspoken. He said, Verlene, weren't you in this department in 1970? This is like the 80s. And she said, yes, I was. She said, I remember you. Let's talk after class. My mom becomes the cool kid in the class. The cute girls want to now study with my mom. So now I'm sitting next to my mother, not because she's my mom, but because the cute girl's on the other side of her. And my mom, life is hard when your mom becomes the cool kid and you're still the odd person. But I watched her do these things. And she actually helped me. She was one of the founders of Nehemiah because she was a family therapist. But I tell that story because just a generation later, she gets on the phone to her brothers and sisters in Chicago. She said, Madison is a place of opportunity. You need to move here. You need to bring your kids here. They started doing it. They're listening. They started listening to her. You fast forward, my family has 13 degrees from UW-Madison. I have a cousin who's a junior. He finishes at 14. And so I met my wife there. And so it was just one brave step. And the community just embraced my mom. The campus did, the city did. And so I'm a product of Madison in what I think was a better day, a brighter day, where we kind of flung the doors open and said, what can we do to make you stay here? My mom was on welfare at the time. Well, we were on welfare at the time. So what do you need? Do you need help with housing? You need help with daycare? What's going to stay in school? But the community made her feel like she was supposed to be here. Now, here's the other thing. In 1970, the population of Black students at UW-Madison was 1,200. Today, it's 624. The black population in America has doubled since 1970. We have 40 million Black people. We had 20 million back then, but we have half the Black students because they didn't find culture and community. They went back to Chicago, Milwaukee, Atlanta, Detroit, DC, because when the numbers started growing and we said we need culture, we need inclusion, Madison said, we don't see color. We don't see culture. We do everybody. And that made people.
I'm not sure what you meant by that.
Now, I'm a pastor, so when I start hearing voices that I don't. Make sure I'm not. That's kind of scary. Siri, can I have some lotto numbers, please? So in doing this and listening to over 700 folks, it's because people want to feel at home here. I have to state the reality, otherwise people just think, well, aren't other groups doing this? If they were, you know it. You wouldn't have to ask. If they were, you know it. It's like when people ask me, well, aren't we doing a better hiring more women as pilots? Do you see any women as pilots? Then you would know when we have them, and when you fly, you see more. Like if you're asking, it is not. So let's stop acting like this is a covert operation. When it happens, we see it. So as we listen, so we found an architect, JLA Associates. Rafiq Assad was a great designer. When he did his initial designs, he met with Black influencers. He said it was the first time as an architect that he's ever presented to an all-Black audience. He never had that experience. As we were sitting there, we were thinking, we've never met with a Black architect before. Again, this is Madison in the 2000s, but it was this moment where we realized, but the shaping, the colors, the materials, all exude Pan-African aesthetic. And again, let me just state this, particularly in light of stuff that's kind of circling around with Black nationality. Black people in Madison aren't trying to hide from society. We can do that. It's called Atlanta, Georgia. We can move. We can live in the majority. The folks who are staying here are trying to find a place to have reinforcement, cultural support, so that we can give Madison our best. We can't give our best unless we're at a place where we can really be our best. And so this space is to help people to engage more in Madison because it's easier just to move. But we're finding that our children don't want to live here because they want to live in places where they're not being asked, can I touch your hair? And all these other kinds of things that just make you feel like you're an outsider. I did that. They don't want to do it. They want to live in a place where people who look like us aren't still the first it's very costly. So what is really historic about this movement is that we asked the Black community to lead this, to direct this effort. You think that that's a novel idea. Most of what's designed for Black people in Madison is not designed by Black people. When asked about the program of this center, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about it specifically, but what happens is when you have space that we're able to design and that speaks to us, that speaks of our accomplishments, that speaks of things other than slavery, Jim Crow, separate but equal, Plessy versus Ferguson. I heard a lecture recently from Dr. Christopher Pujara, who teaches in the Real Black History course. He said, slavery wasn't the beginning of Black history in the United States, it was an interruption of Black history. Black accomplishments have been going on for eons. Slavery was an interruption, it's not the beginning of it. But most children in our community, that's what they learn, unless they get the benefit of being in specialized places, cool places. Like one city that started in our basement years ago, I used to be the board chair of one city. It's very important. When I was in first grade in Chicago and I had a Black teacher and every classmate was Black. Mr. Turner's 102, we're still pen pals. We were pen pals since 1970. Went to her 100th birthday party. When I went to the stage to give my remarks, she stood up in the audience and said, I told him he was going to be president in 1969 when he was 6, and she did. I remember it to this day. Very next year, we moved to Madison. I went to Lapham School and was taught that I was a slave. I had never heard the word slave in my life. I came home and asked my mother, were we slaves? So I thought it could happen again. 150 miles, first grade, second grade. We talk about history, the first thing I learned was that I was a descendant of a slave. The toll of that, the impact of that, the snickering and the jeers and the laughing, we freed you without having that without combating that with the contributions. It's detrimental to the psychological and the emotional well-being of our students in our district. What makes this center unique is that it has a focus on leadership and innovation. So we're not built to create businesses, but to build business leaders and innovators. History, culture, and gatherings are so important because, and that's not just germane to the Black community. In high school here in Madison, if you were part of a foreign language, you go to Milwaukee to the folk festival. You'd see all these wonderful cultures and people wearing clothing that was germane to the culture and food and sound. It was this great celebration. So it's important for reinforcement because it gives you a sense of transcendence and resilience. And so doing that is so important, but then also performance and the arts, because that's where our stories are told, and we get to tell them. Many of the stories that are told about the accomplishments of Black people are really done in Black. And I don't mean physical, what I mean is just told by people who don't have those experiences. And all of these, according to some of the research we're now developing in the School of Medicine and Holistic Medicine Department, is that this actually leads to Black wellness. It's why we have patrons in the arts, it's why we have the Overture Center and Momoka and the Art Fair in the Square. Not just it's just a place to peddle art, but there is a medicinal, a wellness, a salutogenesis, if you will, the science of wellness that's baked into the celebration of culture and belonging and connection. And so we're actually doing this to not only help people to go and develop a stronger sense of identity, but a greater sense of wellness. And this is very, very important. When I started Nehemiah, I was in my late 20s, and I had role models like Bob Gorsuch, Bob Cook, Gary Schaefer, Jane Coleman, Susan Phillips, who we lost in the community way too soon, who put their arms around young leaders. I don't know if any of you are part of Leadership Greater Madison. I was one of the guinea pigs. I was LGM1. They practiced on us to perfect it with you. But I was in front of key leaders of AmFam and banks and could call them and get information. They taught me how to build a board, how to put a team together, how to raise money. 30 years later, I've raised tens of millions of dollars in this community to do Nehemiah. And I've already raised 23 million for the center. But these women and men taught me how to navigate Madison. They invested in me as a leader, as a social innovator, not just a business leader. I want space so that we can work with young people to do that. And the beautiful part about history and cultural gathering is that we are working with administrators, not only in MMSD, but in surrounding areas, so that all students in Southern Wisconsin can come to the center and learn about the contributions of Black people, not just African American, but African, Caribbean, folks who identify as Afro-Latino and African American people. So that people grow up with the love and appreciation for the contributions of Black people and not a disdain for it. And so although it's designed to promote the sense of culture and wellness and excellence, but it's something that we want to invite all students into so that they understand that Wisconsin was shaped by these folks, that their lives have been benefited from us as well. This is a quote from Ray Allen. This is what it will look like from the Beltline. So that's in between our church and Burger King. So the tan mustard color house that you can see up the hill, I still call it the house. That's our administrative offices. It used to be the parsonage for the church. Pastors, we don't live next door to the church anymore. That's way too much exposure. But that building will go down, particularly around dinner time. That building will go down, and this will be a beautiful facility. There's about 140,000 cars that go by the Beltline each day. These are some of the renderings from the inside. At the top left, you'll see our lobby. Again, GLA and Associates have done a beautiful job with this. With innovation space upstairs and theater performing space downstairs. Going clockwise, that's a lounge where weddings, receptions, retirement parties can happen. When dignitaries come to campus, they rarely make it here. When Brian Stevenson was here, when Michelle Alexander was here, when others come, they rarely make it. So we want to have spaces so that young people in our community can interact with these folks and they can talk with leaders. Continuing to go clockwise, that's outside space overlooking the Beltline. And then the bottom left space is the multi-purpose theater space where we can hold about 225 people. The seats retract so that we can have banquets and gatherings, comics, dance teams, film festivals, book festivals. And when I held a community meeting similar to this in the Fiserv Arena in Milwaukee, there were Milwaukee influencers there. They said, wow, we don't have a Black-owned theater in Milwaukee. And so they understand that this becomes a place that people across the state will come to celebrate the best of culture. We have a business plan that was developed by Lord Cultural Resources, which is the same company that did the business plan for the Smithsonian Black History Museum. So we know what it'll take to run this. We have a very eclectic capital campaign team that's been doing a fantastic job with us. Cross-section of leadership in the Black community. Our first 300 donors, the designees came from our community. Today, we raised $23 million in the past year. I've never raised that kind of money before. This is completely new. What's beautiful is that this does not include seven-figure gifts from individuals. These are mainly corporations. We've been able to do this with foundations, but still large community gifts. One of the things for which I'm most proud is $1 million of the $23 million is raised by local executives, not through their organizations. These women and men have given money from their own wallets. And it's called Executives for Black Excellence. Because they realize if we don't maintain a diverse workforce, a work community, they can never have a diverse workforce. Because many of these organizations understand that diversity helps their bottom line. If people keep leaving Madison, they can't meet their goals. And the question that I asked downtown DMI that I asked the chamber is, you have an executive, she happens to be Black, she likes the office, the city, but at the end of the interview, the pay, she says, can we just drive around? I have 2 teenage kids. I just want to see examples of Black innovation. Can we just drive around the city? Where would you take them? And the conversation just gets quiet. Again, that's before my friend Ruben started building, that's before my friend Cameron started talking about what's happening with Central. But they just got quiet and realized they never really thought about that. The turnover has very little to do with the company. University is a good place to work. Exact Science is a good place to work. State of Wisconsin is a good place to work. But if your children are struggling, if your career is well, but those in your family are still struggling, you choose not to live there. And the cost to have to recruit again is just so expensive for businesses. And so they love the idea that this can actually help with recruitment, that they can actually bring potential applicants to a space to see what's going on and how people are working together. Their employees can work here remotely. That's just really exciting. We're just letting people know that, and this is just a slide that I put up. I'm not fundraising here. This is just a deck that's set up, but we let people know that what they can do is really be supportive. The website is theblackcenter.org. And we believe that as our stories are told in music and dance and art fairs and comics and film festivals and book festivals, that this becomes a place to be, that the broader community will come in and learn and celebrate culture from us. When I went to those folk fairs in high school, I learned a lot about the culture that shaped Milwaukee and shaped the state of Wisconsin. None of them looked like me, but because I'm a Wisconsinite, it influenced me. So I enjoyed seeing those cultures. It wasn't just for folks of Scandinavian or German descent. It was for all of Wisconsinites to enjoy. I don't live on any of the lakes, but I still care about clean lakes because of its impact on our area. How people feel that they fit in is really, really important. To go to a space where you might be outnumbered is one thing. To live and thrive and try to excel in that space day in and day out, always being the first, always being the only. And again, for many women in this space, you understand it from a gender perspective. It can have its wear and tear. But as Madison is receiving this accolade for being one of the best places to live, it's never called that the diverse population, but that's what we want. We want Madison to consider that because of the Annie E. Casey Foundation report, Race to Equity, it's one of the worst places to live. We want to turn that around. We believe that we can become a national model of what this is like when the community speaks together. And I love the fact that the mayor of the city of Madison has supported this financially. Joe Parisi and the county has, the governor's given us $5 million. And we've received $1 million earmark from the federal government that we're able to get from Martin Pocan, which is supported by Senator Chandler Baldwin. And so to be supported by all four of those levels of government is really a testament to the fact that I believe that this community that's given so much in my family is ready to receive something that helps us as well. It makes me very, very proud to be a part of this community. So with that, I just pause because I'd like for us to see if we can take a few minutes for questions, but I really, really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you all. Yes.
When do you anticipate having the center open?
We're going to open it in $13 million. That's, so the goal, because we want to raise it, we want to make sure we build it tax free, we'll be a nonprofit, debt free. So our goal is to raise the remaining $13 million by this fall, so that we can break ground next spring. It takes about 14 to 16 months, so we'll open late 2025. But the goal is to do that. We would have been on target to break ground in the next month or so, but the supply chain issues and COVID, it messed everything up. Projects jumped like 5 to 10%. It is crazy. And so what we're doing is looking at the design so that we shrink the building a little bit so that we don't just keep bulldozing with this plan. We're trying to really manage the cost. If we raise all of the money this year, we qualify for a new market tax credit, which can add about $5 million to this. So but the goal is to break ground about a year from now so that we open in 2025. And we're really excited about that. So then the only fundraising is for programs and operations and upkeep of the building, but there will be no mortgage or no service debt on that.
I don't see an address on the website. I was trying to find one. Do you have a location yet?
Sure, it's going to be right up this hill. So that'll be 711 West Badger Road.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. It'll actually start in the old, the Whale of a Wash, Whale of a Wash car. It'll actually start right there. Yeah, I have to keep myself not to call Burger King big country kitchen, which is what it used to be. Yes, ma'am. There was a back there.
Oh, no, I was just asking if that, will Burger King still be there then?
We hope not. No, Burger King will still be there. And Burger King is going to benefit a lot from the traffic. They haven't contributed anything, but they're going to benefit from a lot of the traffic. We wanted to incorporate them into our whole building and offer them to be a part of a new thing. But that's actually one of the more profitable Burger Kings in Madison.
Well, ask them.
We have. They keep telling us no, so we're going to have to make them. You might have to go South Madison on them and make them. No, you're not hearing this. We have to make them an offer they can't refuse.
Alex, I remember years ago, you and I talked about
Yes.
location.
Yeah.
So
great memory.
This point, but. And I, but I was trying to remember the context of it, but I remember you and I helped meet the whole building.
Sure did. Yes, we did.
Trying to bang it out, because we were talking about security and fencing around it and all that kind of stuff. But, I'm interested to know, is Nehemiah then gonna roll right into this?
It's not, that's a really great question. Let me just go back. When we acquired the Well of the Wash, and then we raised money to tear it down, we found out that people lived about. That's right, people were living there. But what happened was in Wisconsin, you only get to use a soccer field for about 5 months out of the year, but then it would take 2 years to seed it. And people thought, well, let's enclose it. So it was going to be the soccer club, but then it just started growing. So, well, if we do this for just kids, what about parents? And so it kept growing and growing and growing. And as we listened to the community, that was really the turning point, Joe. The soccer field, an idea that I had, as we listened to the community, they said, it'd be really great if dances and art shows and parties could happen, and we can invite the broader community in. We're building space so that students from UW can get on campus and have a place to have surrogate aunts and uncles, moms and dads to interact. Madison College, we've been in discussion with them as well. So it's evolved. No, the center is its own 501c3. It's the Center for Black Excellence and Culture. I thought about rolling it into Nehemiah because that'd be easier on me. But I realized it would make Nehemiah too top heavy, because this is so different from the social service business of it. So the plan is that as we break ground, I will retire from Nehemiah. I think I just put in 30 years as its founder. And then we'll focus on operating the center. But we'll find places probably to partner. But Nehemiah will find office space elsewhere and continue to do the reentry work and the programming work with young kids. But the center is its own brand new entity. Thank you. Sure. Great question. Great memory too. Yeah, we've been there since '87, so we've had a lot of ideas up in the year. Yes, sir.
The design pictures sort of made it look like it's going to be on a flat piece of land, and yet it seems to me that where you're putting it does go uphill. Right?
Sure. The front part that you mentioned, sir, will be right on Badger Road. The architects and Fendor, as our construction company, they want to take advantage of the drop off of the topography. So rather than trying to do all of this massive landfill, you walk in, sort of like social science up on campus. You walk in on the 6th floor, and then you just drop right down. So you walk in on this main level, but the theater and a lot of those spaces that will be like 2 levels high, that will be on the lower level. We'll put walking paths back there as well. There'll be restaurants inside. It'll develop about 3,000 square feet of innovation space upstairs, and office space, and then galleries, a library, a senior space, because a lot of seniors in South Madison they seem to go into hiding when they're ill or develop dementia. You just don't see them anymore. And so having space for the children and the older folks can meet together is really, really important.
You say the square footage, how much?
It is, no, we're thumb wrestling right now on that to figure out where we're between 65,000 now, having to rethink our cost, probably around between 45 to 50,000 square feet. So that would be about 2 times larger than our current facility. So it will not connect with the church. The church actually ended up selling land to the center. So it's its own entity on its own land with its own 501c3. If I could just add something just quickly. Years ago, Ruben Anthony put me and Kaleem in the car, and we in the trunk. And no, we drove to Milwaukee to take a look at Sherman Phoenix. It was an economic development, social, innovative space in Milwaukee. And it had education, it had business, but it had cultural gatherings. We all experienced that together. But we came back, and Kaleem continued running with the One City Vision. Ruben launched the hub. We launched the center. We were all inspired out of that same trip to bring something back to Madison. So it's very interesting that sometimes people will ask, well, aren't you being competitive? Aren't you raising money in the same? We went on the same field trip together to have this motivation to say, if this can happen in Milwaukee, I hope there's no Milwaukeeans on there. And so we figured Madison can make this happen. So I love the fact that we experienced that that day, each got in our own lanes and continue to work together and to support each other in each other's work. I think because we're up in this beautiful hill, it's going to be a crowning jewel that will drive people into South Madison. But I'm just happy to see this happening in a corridor that has been home one of Wisconsin's most diverse populations for decades. This 53713 is still one of the most diverse zip codes in the entire state, and it was when I was a kid. So to see something happening like that here, that reminds me of what happened on East Washington, gives me a lot of excitement about what this means for the city of Madison. And I want us all to celebrate this because of how it demonstrates our willingness to be home to anyone who wants to make this home. And my family has made this home for half a century. We want others to continue to do that as well. So thank you all so much for your time.